Welcome to another Impact Drive Time presentation, a value-added feature designed to help you increase your bottom line from Gateway Financial Advisors Incorporated. GFA is striving to provide our partners the synergy, support, and motivation needed to achieve their maximum potential. Go to www.gfainvestments.com or call 888-939-9714 to find out how you can be part of the winning team of Gateway Financial Advisors Incorporated. Now sit back and enjoy as Gateway Financial Advisors presents another Impact Drive Time presentation to help you increase your bottom line.
Welcome to another Drive Time Impact Gateway podcast designed to help you increase your bottom line. I'm Shane Westholter, the CEO and founder of Gateway Financial Advisors and Gateway Insurance Group. And as Gateway Insurance and Financial Services, we help you take the if out of life so you can live a quality life and maintain your dignity. Today, I have a special guest, Gail Van Ness, who is a certified financial planner, a certified long-term care consultant, and a financial professional for many years. And we will be welcoming her onto the podcast. So, Gail, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Shane. It's a pleasure to be here.
We want to begin sharing with all of our listeners a little bit about yourself, personal background, maybe something about your childhood, or a question that we ask all of our guests is, what's that one thing that you are proud that you accomplished before your age 20? So I'm going to turn it over to you, allow you to just kind of give us some of your background and let the listeners get to know who you are.
All right, Shane. Well, listen, I was born in Illinois, and I've lived in Texas most of my life. I have a bachelor's of architecture, a master's in business, and I'm a certified long-term care consultant. When I graduated from architecture, I was involved in the construction industry during a time when women were not in the field. I learned at that time the importance of working hard, do your best, and listening to others, and the value of problem-solving skills.
Very nice. How do you apply some of that to today in the job that you do, some of the problem-solving skills, just out of curiosity?
Well, needless to say, all of us, as we're developing our plan, it's important to understand where we are and where we want to be. I spent the first half of my career in corporate America as an architect and senior executive overseeing construction projects. And through that, I learned the importance of having a plan and also a solid foundation. So today I consider myself a financial architect. It's important for families to have a life plan to protect their income and their family and the ability to adjust to life's changes. And a strong foundation in your plan is so critical. And so quite often I hear my clients say they wish they'd only known. As advisors, we can help them take the if out of life.
You've been with Gateway for a number of years, and I know you've been in the financial profession for years even prior to that. So let's take some time and allow all of our listeners, maybe also some of your clients that might listen to this in the future, tell us a little bit about your personal story, maybe some background, and what it is that really got you involved or interested in the financial service industry.
Well, unfortunately, when I was in high school, we had an event in my family. My father, who was 46, died of a sudden heart attack. He was here one day and gone the next. He was a family man. He was an engineer, so Shane, you know, they dot their I's, cross their T's. And he always said that if something happened to him, that our family would be taken care of. Unfortunately, he didn't know what he didn't know. He had no will and no life insurance. My mother wasn't even familiar with the financial affairs. He wrote all the checks. She was not involved in any of this. And so, as you can well imagine, this started our family on a new journey.
Wow. So that's one of those life happens type of stories. So as a result of that, you kind of got an interest in the financial service profession, unexpected circumstances that, caused that. What is that your why? Because that happened to you personally, or what is the why that drives you every day to get up and help people in the financial service industry?
Yeah, my why is, I want to help clients know if they're okay. And if not, what they need to do to be okay. Financial independence is about peace of mind and control. And I realized from my own personal experience and my dad's sudden death, being in high school, my experience in corporate America, the importance for families to develop a written plan to manage their personal financial lives, to focus on being in a better position to thrive in life's unexpected circumstances.
That is something that we deal with every day in the financial professional world, and you say it well. I mean, we've all talked about protecting for the unexpected and planning for the expected. And sometimes that unexpected is where the holes are. As we continue on, how do you build the trust relationship with your clients in the financial profession? Obviously, there's a lot of trust, both on managing of assets as well as doing insurance. I know you do both. So what would be your answer to that? How do you build that financial trust?
I view my role as an advisor as really an educator. What I try to do is educate my clients on the issues in their plan and the options available for them to improve their plan. Our relationship begins with understanding what's important to them, what their life goals are, their concerns, where they have their current financial affairs, what's the strengths and the weaknesses in their plan. And from this information, we can work together to develop a written roadmap for them, which helps them when life's direction changes. It's so critical to have a plan.
I agree with you. The plan and sitting down with them, and we talk about, as you know, what if I live, what if I linger, what if I leave, what's my legacy, and it's protecting the assets, also protecting the wealth and protecting our own health, et cetera. How do you work with them? What's your main focus in your business? Is it the wealth management? Is it more the insurance side, or is it kind of a combination of both?
Well, I believe that life's like a puzzle. All of those pieces have to fit together to form the picture. But a focus in my practice is long-term care planning. Long-term care planning is important because it's so critical as a successful part of the financial plan. People think long-term care planning is about an insurance policy, and it's not. It may be part of the plan, but it's more important for individuals to understand the financial and physical and emotional impacts of long-term care. And so what I try to do in my practice is to help them understand what is their plan and how are they going to accomplish their needs down the road.
Long-term care planning is one of those that's often overlooked by financial professionals. It's in that same vein as disability. Nobody really wants to think about becoming disabled or sick or not being able to do the things that we do every day, which we'll get into here in just a moment. I know it's part of the long-term care process. I guess the misunderstanding there is long-term care is only for when I get old, and long-term care to me is one of those things that for many years, as you know, has not been talked about. And people, for whatever reason, especially in the financial professional world, don't spend a lot of time bringing that up. So before we get into all the long-term care side, what is your unique sales position? If I were to sit down with you as a client and I would say, Gail, I really need help in my financial planning, what would be your unique sales position to me versus, say, the financial planner across the street?
Well, as I indicated earlier, I saw firsthand as a teenager the importance of having a plan, having insurance, having estate planning done, so having a cohesive, a holistic plan. On the front of long-term care planning, I personally saw the impact of that. My mother-in-law had dementia. She was diagnosed in her mid-80s, and so she sustained dementia issues for about 7 years. As a result of that, we saw the physical, financial, and personal effects upon our family related to long-term care issues, just like I personally saw the effects of not having a plan and insurance when my dad passed away. And so, in the case of my mother-in-law, she was in a memory care facility for almost 7 years at the cost of about $500,000 in today's dollars. Think about that, Shane. You can imagine the cost in 25 to 30 years. So I personally have seen on the long-term care side a family situation. In addition, I was the national sales director for the assisted living and memory care developer. And then once again, I saw firsthand on families the impact both personally and financially. And last but not least, currently I host workshops on behalf of the Dementia Society of America. And the intent here is to help families understand the impact of dementia related to the health and financial issues of the individual and families. And so I feel like I bring for my clients a different perspective because I've seen the firsthand impact of not addressing the issues.
Yeah, that's great. I would say that probably all of us have either directly experienced that, as you said, with a family member or an extended family member. And if you haven't, I would say that probably most, if not all of us, certainly know someone who has experienced that. So it's around us. We're very aware of it. We know that Alzheimer's, dementia, those are items that are coming up more and more in our society. It's getting a lot of press and more awareness. I also sit, as I think I've shared with you in the past, on the ALS board here in New Mexico, and that's another one of those diseases that starts to attack the body. And again, if they don't have long-term care, it can be a huge financial detriment, to the individual or to the family. So for those that may not be fully aware of long-term care and what long-term care really is, what we're talking about when we say long-term care, let me turn it over to you. And Gail, would you just kind of give everybody some background? What is long-term care planning?
Sure, I'd be happy to. One issue you raised, Shane, and it's very true. We always think of long-term care planning as just a seniors issue, and it's not. It also can happen to us as we're young. You think of Christopher Reeves, he was Superman, but he had a long-term care need. He also had a disability need because he lost his income and he was no longer able to care for himself. But most of us don't realize that long-term care planning is not about insurance. It is a part of the plan, don't get me wrong, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the reality is long-term care planning is about having a plan. It's important for individuals to have the conversation. Advisors should be talking with their clients. Where do they want their care? How do they plan to pay for it? It's about determining what does living on life's own terms if I have care needs as I get older and developing a plan to achieve that. Today we're living longer. We experience more health issues as we live and age where we didn't experience it if we only lived 5 years into retirement. We've got 10,000 baby boomers a day retiring. And I always laugh and say there are the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. And so if we live 30 years in retirement, healthcare becomes more of an issue. Long-term care is about custodial care. It's not about medical care. So what do I mean with custodial care? You may have heard the term activities of daily living, and that relates to dressing, transferring, bathing, incontinence, and cognitive issues. Just like you mentioned, ALS, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all of those issues relate to long-term care needs. And so that's really what long-term care focuses on.
And I like the way you say that it's about planning how you want to receive your care, not necessarily, let's just talk about an insurance policy. People have to determine, do I want care at home? Do I want my family to take care of me? Do I want a professional to take care of me? Do I want to be in a professional facility? Just real quick before I ask the next question, one small story I had when you said, well, it's not necessarily for when we get old. That's so true. I had a client that was in a motorcycle wreck and honestly qualified at the time for long-term care. Now, he was in his 30s. He didn't have a long-term care policy. He did have a disability policy, which was nice for the income side, but it did not, help pay for the care that he needed to get in and out of the wheelchair during his rehab. The good news is he eventually recovered, but he definitely was about 3 years in rehab. During that 3-year period, he could not take a shower on his own. He could not dress himself, as he was going through the rehab. Eventually he could again, but he certainly had those obstacles, if you will, that he had to try and overcome. So long-term care means I'm not necessarily sick per se. I could be, but really I have trouble just doing normal daily living activities that many of us take for granted, transferring, walking, taking a bath, toileting, maybe feeding myself, etc. Is that correct? Is that what we're understanding here?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. It's not about medical issues, but really the care issues. Everything you do every day. A lot of times clients will say, well, won't Medicare cover this? And there's a misunderstanding. Medicare does not cover long-term care planning. Medicare does cover rehab needs if you've been hospitalized for 3 days. And Medicaid covers care if you don't have any financial resources. So if you are someone who has limited investment assets or limited resources, period, then Medicaid may be a solution. But for most individuals, Medicare is not going to be a way to cover long-term care needs. They really need to develop a long-term care plan because they can have a successful plan with their income needs met. But the cost of care, think about it, Shane. I mentioned my mother-in-law, $500,000 over the course of 7 years. Most plans cannot sustain that level of cost. So having a long-term care plan is important, and insurance can be a good fit so that clients can share the risk and the cost. It allows families to protect their income in retirement and also meet the needs of a long-term care issue.
Isn't it fair to say, Gail, I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. Isn't it fair to say that, I don't really need an insurance to pay for that. I've got family members, I've got a spouse, I've got a daughter or daughter-in-law. They're going to come over and take care of me and help me with all of that more than not. So part of my care plan is going to be this. Maybe you can help me on what's next. But my plan would be say, if that happens to me, I'm just going to depend on family to take care of me? How would you advise me otherwise?
Well, those are important issues to address. And some of the things I always advise clients to consider is a couple of things. First of all, society's changed. And so quite often our kids don't live near us. And so they work and they're not able to really be our caregivers. And the other side is, do we want them as our caregivers or do we want them as our advocates? Even our spouse, if we are in our mid-80s at the time a care event occurs, is our spouse, if they're the same age, going to be able to handle the care needs? And so long-term care insurance offers us a way to be more efficiently handling the cost of the care, as well as puts us in control of our plan. It allows us to choose where's our long-term care going to be provided, allows us to control the decision. It provides us a bucket of money for care, which is typically less than self-insurance. In today's world, almost 70% of 65-year-olds will experience some level of long-term care need down the road. As I mentioned earlier, a long-term care plan is not just insurance, it's determining, is my family going to take care of me? Where am I going to receive my care? How am I going to pay for it? But typically we find families are not in a position to be the caregiver, and having some sort of a plan that also has the resources available to pay the cost is a much more efficient part of the plan.
Well, and as you mentioned, it may be physical limitations of that family member. They may or may not physically be able to do it. They may have good intentions. They may have a good heart and desire. They may even start to provide that care, and then eventually it becomes a little tedious for them, or they start feeling the stress, or maybe they lift somebody wrong and hurt themselves and they become injured. More importantly, I think, if in today's world, as you said, there may be two working individuals. And are you going to ask your daughter or daughter-in-law or son-in-law to quit their employment and come take care of me as the parent? That's a pretty big ask, and what's going to happen to them economically. So long-term care insurance may be one part of that solution. Can I get this at any time? How do I go about getting long-term care insurance, and maybe when should I consider that? At what age would be reasonable?
Great question. Most people think they'll wait longer because until they need it, they don't need it, right? But the reality is the cost of long-term care and the availability depends on your age and your health. And so I always encourage clients to look at today is the time to be addressing the issue, because you're never any healthier than you are today. Long-term care is not bought. You qualify for it, and you qualify based on health considerations. So long-term care underwriting is evaluated based on an individual's needs. They look at health issues like arthritis. You mentioned ALS, osteoporosis, Parkinson's, early onset dementia. These are issues that you may not immediately die from, but you will linger and have a care need. And so if you've had a diagnosis of this, you may not be able to get coverage. And unfortunately, I've seen with my own clients that sometimes those diagnoses come when we least expect it. So I always encourage people to look at that part of the plan as soon as possible. It's not too soon to look at it in your 50s, early 50s. And sometimes, I'll be honest, I've had parents who've advised their kids in their 40s to start considering it because they've seen firsthand the need.
Tell me how a long-term care policy actually works. If I qualify for it and I have it, how does that work?
Well, a policy can be designed to meet a client's needs and goals. First and foremost, where do you want your care? Do you want it in your home or in a facility? Most individuals want their care first in their home. Typically, they will move to a facility, an assisted living community, or maybe a nursing home at the point that their family can no longer keep them at home. The next question is, what's the monthly benefit? And how long will that benefit provide for? If I'm in an area and the monthly cost for assisted living is around $5,000, then I might design a monthly benefit for that amount of coverage. If we've seen statistically that care needs on just a general care experience is probably about 3 to 4 years, but if someone has dementia, it can be upwards of 8 to 10 years. And so what is the benefit period I want to design? What is the elimination period? How long do I want to self-insure? There are reimbursement plans and indemnity plans. So what is that? If I have a $5,000 monthly benefit and I have a reimbursement plan, Shane, what that means is that if I've incurred expenditures of $3,000 for care services, then the insurance carrier will pay me $3,000 to reimburse me for the expenditures, not the full $5,000 monthly benefit. Now, if I have an indemnity plan and I've had $3,000 of expenditures, they will reimburse me for the full $5,000. So needless to say, indemnity plans tend to be more expensive than reimbursement plans. There's hybrid policy designs or traditional policy designs. What we used to have is what I categorize as a traditional policy design, kind of like your car insurance. You pay as you go, and if you don't need it, you don't use it. Clients today are a little bit more concerned with that for a variety of reasons, and so with the need of the baby boomers aging, there are now hybrid policies, which are really life and long-term care policies. And so if someone's got a concern that they may not need it, but they'd like to have some level of, that might be a solution that fits their needs. So it's important to look at what are the parameters or the desires of the individual and design a plan that meets their needs and their budget. Something is better than nothing, typically. And so the individual needs to determine how much do they want to share the risk and how much do they want to self-insure. And it is a balancing act between the design objectives and the cost. How much can I afford and how much am I willing to self-insure?
That's great information. Gail, thank you. I know I've heard a lot of different types of plans that exist out there now. So obviously contacting someone like yourself, a financial professional that even specializes and focuses on, or a certified long-term care specialist, you can help guide us through those questions. You know, I know there's annuities that offer some benefits. Life insurance has some benefits like that on it now, maybe a return of premium type policy, you know, all those options, traditional policies. That's where your expertise definitely is needed and helps for the consumers to make the right choices. And it's not necessarily finding the cheapest plan, it's finding the right plan, as we would say in all the planning that we've done. I know I went through this with my mother-in-law first, and then with my own father with dementia, Alzheimer's, before he passed. And one of the things when we were considering all the options were, well, which family member is going to take care of him? Which home is he going to live in of the family members if we're going down that route? My brother, Sean, ended up taking care of my dad specifically and had him in his home. Then it was, well, the nurses need to come over. Well, then Sean needs to travel. So now we either have to get somebody to come into the house and stay with him, or we had to take him to a facility that they would watch him. And I used the phrase when we were looking at a couple of different facilities and trying to make that decision, it's don't worry about the cost. Pay attention to what you see, what you smell, and what you hear. Those are going to be more important because that's the world they live in for whatever time they're in there. With all of that, there's just so many choices. There's so many questions. There's so many things that people may not even know what to ask. So I think that's part of the challenge. So when I'm considering long-term care planning, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what to ask. If help advise me a little bit, just briefly, what are some of the other considerations related to long-term care planning?
Well, we always think about long-term care planning about addressing the care needs of the parent or the spouse, right? But it's also important to take into consideration in developing a long-term care planning the potential issues for a caregiver. You mentioned your brother as being really kind of a surrogate caregiver, even though you were bringing in care helpers along the way. So it's important that the caregiver or the care advocates also are focused on their own health and emotional stability and also financial stability. Caregiving, addressing the issues of a loved one can take a physical, emotional, and financial toll. So as part of the overall planning, it's important to take into account the issues upon not only the individual who will need care, but also those who will take care of that person. And so their care is important also, to be their best person.
You've heard me say many times it's about dignity. And one of the things, with my father, it was very important for him to always maintain his dignity. He had a big concern about how people perceived him, how they saw him, or what they thought about him. And I got to tell you, one of the most humiliating things on my side, or humbling things, it wasn't humiliating, I would say humbling things on my side, was when, I had to help my mom give my dad, that shower because he couldn't control his bowel movements and things anymore. And my mom wasn't able to physically help, give him a shower. And sometimes it's very humbling to look at and say, here's a man who I had respect for. He always had his dignity. And yet I'm having to, as his son then, help him at least shower and maintain some of his own personal dignity. dignity. So those are very hard things for us emotionally, as you said. It's not so much just financially or even physically. It's that emotional impact that even on myself, as a son, to have to give my parent a shower was, quite challenging at the time. Folks, you've heard it out there. We need to take care of yourself as usual, and we need to make sure that we're planning, seeking out someone like Gail to help give us that advice. Gail, before we wrap up today, what's that one piece of advice that you would have for clients and their families that you would like to share?
Well, the one thing I always suggest is don't go it alone. Whether it's planning for your retirement, planning for long-term care, planning for a premature death, seek out advice of a qualified advisor who can help you review your needs, help you analyze your options, and also design a plan that accomplishes your personal and financial objectives. As it relates to long-term care planning, you may have a friend who's already purchased a policy, and they may have had a good experience with an advisor. Or if you don't have that resource, seek out a certified long-term care consultant who can advise you and design you a long-term care plan that works for you and helps you to be financially successful in life's uncertainties.
Thank you, Gail. We've heard from Gail Van Ness today, certified financial planner, certified long-term care and consultant. Gail, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you in this new world, regardless of where they are? They can reach out to you virtually. So how would people best reach out to you if they have additional questions, both as financial planners who may have questions, also as maybe clients that would hear this or potential clients? Best way to get a hold of you, Gail?
They can reach me at gvannest@bridgepointfinancial.net, GVANNEST. Our website is bridgepointfinancial.net, and we welcome any questions that we can help clients or individuals, families in their search for information. I want to thank you for inviting me on today, Shane. It's been a privilege to be a part of your conversation.
Thank you, Gail, and thank you for being part of the Gateway group of financial professionals. We appreciate you and all that you do. Again, if you have any questions and you're listening to this podcast, please reach out to Gail. She'll be happy to share her experience, her background and knowledge. And if she doesn't have the answer, I'm sure she'll point you in the right direction to get that knowledge. Thank you again for joining us. This is another edition of the Gateway Podcast, designed to help you increase your bottom line. I'm Shane Westholther, the CEO and founder of Gateway Financial and Gateway Insurance. And again, thank you, Gail, for being our guest today on the podcast.
Thank you, Shane.
Thank you for listening to our Gateway Podcast. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services offered through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Gateway Financial Advisors Incorporated and Cambridge Investment Research are not affiliated.
Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed this program. GFA is focused on being a one-stop shop for full financial planning. To get more information about how you can join and be part of this winning team, go to www.gfainvestments.com or call us at 888-939-9714. Once again, our website is www.gfainvestments.com, or you can contact us at 888-939-9714. This has been a presentation of Gateway Financial Advisors.